For the majority of my life, I was the nice girl. The one who always said yes. The one who smoothed over conflicts even when it wasn't my fault. The one who apologized for everything even though I had nothing to apologize for. And the one who made everyone else feel comfortable. Even though, in retrospect, I felt like I was dying inside. And then I hit my mid-40s. And at that time, I wasn't connecting that it had anything to do with perimenopause, nothing. But I hit my mid-40s. And suddenly, I couldn't do it anymore. This fake smile that I always put on always felt like a mask. Of course, no problem, sure. That felt like a lie. And the constant accommodation of others, putting others above myself, it started to feel like betrayal of myself. I didn't have those words at the time. It was just a feeling. But here's what nobody tells you about what happens when you stop being the nice girl. Because you actually have to figure out who you are. If you're not the person that everyone else needs you to be, then who are you? So if this question, if you're asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? And that question is keeping you up all night, you're in the right place. Because today we're diving deeper into what I felt like was an identity crisis that comes with a spiritual awakening, that comes with perimenopause. And how do we navigate it without completely losing ourselves? I lost myself, and it took me quite a few years to find out who I am. And I say identity crisis because as we're moving into this beautiful part, this second act of our life, we're stepping into the 2.0 version of ourselves. We're essentially identity shifting, as Kwasi Johir talks about. But if we're shifting from 1.0 to 2.0, yeah, that's going to create a crisis. We don't know what's happening, but we're shifting. So we're going to take away this whole idea of I'm having a midlife crisis. That minimizes what is actually happening. So welcome back to my channel. I'm Priya, and I'm your host. And if you caught the episode the other day about menopause and spiritual awakening, you know we're in the middle of having some conversations that nobody else is having about this transformation that happens in a woman's life at midlife. So in that other episode, like I said, we talked about how menopause isn't just a medical event. It's often a spiritual awakening. And your symptoms might actually be the signs that you're finally waking up. And not just any kind of waking up. You're waking up to who you really are beneath all the conditioning. Now, when I say conditioning, there's layers of that. Society, gender, cultural, your interfamilial conditioning. So many layers, but you're waking up to, hey, who am I? Who am I at my soul level? Because ultimately, we are souls living a human experience. And if you're coming into this place of trying to understand who am I at my soul level, it's not woo-woo. It's not, as I used to call it, spiritually la-la. We are spiritual beings. We are souls having a human experience. And so congratulate yourself if you're starting to resonate with this. If you're starting to say, hey, who am I? Who am I? Congratulations. Because I can't wait for you to get on the other side of that, because you're opening yourself up to magic. So back to that other episode. Here's what I didn't talk about. What happens next? What happens when you can't be the person you've always been, but you don't know who you're supposed to be instead? Because the truth is, spiritual awakening isn't just about gaining clarity, it's also about losing identity. And for those of us who have built our entire sense of self around being nice or anything else that others have defined for you, this can feel like death. And it's a very painful process. So if you are in this, if you're catching this episode and you are in the midst of this, just know you're not alone. And just know that what you're going through is real. And you will get to the other side. When I was going through my spiritual awakening, it was so hard. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I was going through the motions of work because I needed to pay my bills, but it didn't light me up like it used to. It's like somebody turned off the switch on work. When did this happen? And I followed somebody on YouTube. Her name is Christina Lopes, the Heart Alchemist. What an incredible teacher. My friend guided me to her. And the first episode that I clicked on, it was like she was speaking directly to me about a spiritual awakening. And what happens with relationships, what happens in your life, what happens in your mind. So today, we're going deeper. We're talking about the identity crisis that comes with waking up and how to navigate it without falling apart. So let's talk about what the nice girl identity actually is, because I think we need to name it before we can actually heal it. So ask yourself first, have you just been the nice girl your entire life? Like I said, saying yes all the time, apologizing. I was at work the other day and a colleague of mine we were just talking and she started her sentence with sorry. I'm like, why are you apologizing? And she goes, I can't get out of it. I just say sorry all the time. Women are conditioned to be like this, to be nice girls. So the nice girl is the one who learned early that her value came from making other people happy. She's the one that got praised for being so helpful and such a good girl. Oh, that's a trigger word. When I hear good girl, I just want to blow up and explode. She learned that love was conditional, that it depended on her being pleasant, agreeable, and accommodating. When I was in high school, this was in late 80s, the fashion was wearing short overalls and one strap was off and a tank top underneath. And my mom got me that for my birthday one year. I went to school and the teacher comes up to me and he said, stop dressing like a thug. You're not like that. You're a good girl. So all of a sudden my subconscious said, oh, if I wear these kind of clothes, I'm not a good girl. And another example, I was on vacation. I was on a retreat in Nepal. Ironically, it was a spiritual or religious retreat, and it's where I decided, yeah, I'm not religious at all. And that came from how others were behaving. Whole other subject and topic and episode. And it was during the World Cup. And I'm a huge fan of Shakira. I just went to her concert in Phoenix last month. Absolutely love her. Her authenticity and just how she expresses herself. And she was on singing Waka Waka, and I was captivated looking at that big screen. I think we're in the middle of Kathmandu somewhere. The entire pilgrimage group was together. I'm looking up, and the one guy who's Indian, who doesn't know me, says, don't watch that. We don't do that kind of stuff. You're a good girl. And I was younger, but I thought to myself, oh, so good girls aren't allowed to dance like Shakira. Think about how much chaos this creates in us when we hear those things over and over and over again. Maybe you were the oldest daughter who became the second parent. Maybe you were the peacemaker in a chaotic household. Maybe you experienced the examples that I just gave you. And maybe you were the one who learned that maybe your needs aren't as important as everybody else's comfort. So, whatever your origin story is, that nice girl identity, it becomes a survival strategy. From my perspective, that's what I was doing. I was just trying to survive, and the only way I could do it is just by being nice. It's how you learn to be safe in the world. It's how you learn to be loved. But here's the thing about survival strategies, they work until they don't. And for many of us, perimenopause is when they stop working. Thank God. Thank God it stops working. And remember what we talked about in that other episode, how menopause can trigger a spiritual awakening. Or they're happening simultaneously. Maybe menopause is the spiritual awakening. Maybe there's no trigger. Well, part of what awakening means is that you can't keep operating from old patterns that no longer serve you. Like I said the other day, and I gave a good example of your operating system and your computer changing, updating. When you click update on your computer, you can't go back to the older version. Now you're in a more optimized system, but you can't go back. And the reason they create updates is because things have become outdated. So, if you've been a nice girl your whole life, guess what? It's outdated. So, just try and remember the first time. Maybe you haven't said no to something without explaining yourself yet. But I remember the first time when I said no without giving a whole paragraph or 10-minute explanation why I'm saying no. It was liberating. It was scary because I just said no, and my old self wanted to be like, no, because. And the because was coming from a place of wanting to be liked by the person. What if I said no and they don't like me anymore? But guess what else? You have the fear and the guilt, but you also have the liberation. And saying no was just the beginning, because once you stop being the nice girl, you have to confront a very, very terrifying question. If you're not that, then who are you? Who are you? So let's talk about what happens when your identity, or as Quasi calls it, your 1.0 version of yourself starts to crumble. Because I want you to know that if you're going through this, you're not alone and you're not crazy. But you might find yourself thinking, I don't know who I am anymore. The person that's talking to you might say, you're not yourself. You're not like who you used to be. You're not the person that I met. You might be asking yourself, I don't know who I am anymore. You might feel like you're floating, untethered, without any kind of landmark of your old personality to guide you. See, we have these things throughout our life that keep us grounded, that help us to remember who we are based on that identity. And when those things, like tent stakes, are taken out of the ground, we're floating and we're saying, hey, who am I? So maybe you used to be the one who called or everyone called when they needed help. Nobody ever called you when you needed help. Nobody answered when you needed help. And now you're screening your calls, and somebody comes through that, we can talk about maybe they're starting to feel like energy vampires. And you actually just look at that phone call ring and you don't answer it, or you send it to voicemail. I used to answer all my calls because I had such a fear. What if I don't answer? They might not like me. Now I don't even care. Maybe you used to be the one who always had the right thing to say, and now you're comfortable with silence. See, here's the thing with what I do and helping women at this pivotal time in our lives to find their voice. Doesn't mean necessarily always speaking up. It also is being comfortable with the silence. Maybe you used to be the one who never rocked the boat. And now you're rocking it side to side. You're creating waves. So, as we talked about in the other episode, spiritual teachers will call this an ego death. When I heard this term, I didn't even understand what ego meant. I just understood ego from the perspective of, oh, you're so egotistical. I thought it meant vain. I didn't know that ego death meant the dissolution of who I am, of the constructed self. And it's terrifying because the ego is how we've learned to navigate the world. Now, I won't go too deep into my experience where I had my first experience with ego death. It was pretty profound and I was clueless what I was going into. And the facilitator told me that I would experience a death of my ego. So I thought, okay. And when I had the experience, it felt like I died and all I was left with was light, beautiful frequencies, and sound. I wasn't thinking. I stopped thinking. When I came out of that, I wasn't myself anymore. I stopped. That was when I started shedding the 1.0 version of myself. So in spiritual traditions, this is seen as a necessary part of awakening. So just remember that. If you're experiencing an ego death, it's a necessary part. You can't become who you really are until you stop being who you think you're supposed to be. Think about that. I'm going to say that again. You can't become who you really are until you stop being who you think you're supposed to be. Think about, and this might be a journaling activity for you after watching this episode. Think about, who did you think you were supposed to be? How are you raised to think you're supposed to be? Right? When you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel spiritual. It feels horrible. It feels like you're losing your mind. You might feel guilty about your new boundaries. You might feel selfish, prioritizing your own needs. Somebody might even actually tell you you are selfish for prioritizing your own needs. And you might feel like you're disappointing everyone around you. And here's what I want you to know. Those feelings are normal. They're just part of the process. And when you're shifting from 1.0 to 2.0, you're not just changing your behavior. You're changing your entire relationship with yourself and the world and how you relate to the world. The way I see the world now and the way that I relate to it is so completely different from just a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, I was reactive. So that kept me in my 1.0 self. And now, in this more reflective place, I can see things differently. Dynamics that used to get me so mad, now it's, that's really interesting. So this is why, just everything that I'm explaining, why relationships often get turbulent during this phase. People in your life it's like the people in your life are used to the old you. They're used to your predictable responses, your endless availability, only when they need you. Of course, when you reach out to them, they'll ghost you. And your willingness to put your needs first. And a lot of times, relationships can crumble. And that might be what you're experiencing, and it is painful. When I was going through this, I had an intimate relationship crumble before my eyes. I was doing everything to try and keep it together, and it was just crumbling and crumbling and crumbling. And I didn't have the tools to be able to say, okay, this is This is a result of you shifting, Priya. I had no clue. It's only after the fact that I can see it now. And I lost friends too. But on the other side of that, I had friends coming back into my life. I had people come back into my life where we were having great conversations once again. And they were able to accept me for being this newer version of myself. And they liked it. They liked this newer version. So when you start showing up differently, others may not like it, or they might. They might try to pull you back into old patterns. They even might try to make you feel guilty for changing. And with the example that I just gave you, here's what I've learned. The people who truly love you will adjust. They'll always be there for you. The people who don't, that tells you something important about the relationship, as painful as it is. So, I want to talk about what I call the wilderness phase. So think about what the wilderness is, right? I think wilderness, I think jungle. But the wilderness phase is that space between who you were and who you're becoming. And that space is where most people get stuck. Because it's uncomfortable. It's the place where you've let go of old patterns, but you haven't yet formed new ones. It's where you know what you don't want, but you're not sure what you do want. And you might feel restless, unsettled, like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what. And you might feel like you're supposed to have answers, and all you have is questions. It might be a period of deep learning. That's what it was for me. I couldn't do enough learning. I was, oh my gosh, I have to learn sound healing. Now I need to become a meditation teacher. Oh, I have to learn Reiki again. Oh, let me learn about somatic healing. Now let me do a breathwork course. Oh, past lives, let me learn how to access the Akashic records. It was one thing after another, and that happened in the wilderness phase. I don't regret it one bit because it really helped me to become this 2.0 version of myself. And I'm continuing to transform. But it was messy. It was messy. And embrace the messiness. If you haven't heard that before, embrace the messiness. It's normal. It's part of the process. And it's what transformation looks like. It's uncomfortable, it's uncertain, it's messy. And as I've mentioned in other episodes, spiritual traditions call it the dark night of the soul. It's the space between death and rebirth, between the old self and the new self. And that's where real work happens. So as I was sharing before, I had that experience where I firsthand experienced ego death, and it was so scary. And when I came back to my house, that same evening, the very next day, I was awake and having this ego death, and it was scary. And I didn't have the tools to breathe through it and just lay down. It was scary because we fight these things. We fight change. So I went outside to ground myself. And what I found was the most beautiful thing. On my wall were two moths. They were the size of my hands. And they were like this. And I Googled it right away because I said, I've never seen this before. And what that symbolized was death and rebirth, what I had just experienced. And it was at that point I knew I was safe. So if you see the thumbnail on this video, those moths are what I found to symbolize death and rebirth. So how do you navigate this phase without losing your mind? First thing, get comfortable with not knowing. You're not going to know right away. It takes time. It takes shedding lots of layers. However you want to think of it, shedding layers like a snake, or peeling the layers away like an onion. Our culture teaches us that we should always have a plan, always know what we want, always be moving towards a goal. But not necessarily. It's okay to be comfortable with not knowing and to just say, this is where I am in my life right now, and this is what I'm going through. And I ask you this question: what if not knowing is actually a gift? What if this uncertainty is creating space for something so beautiful and new to emerge? What if you don't have to figure it out right now? I absolutely love coming on YouTube and talking. I don't care who's watching. I just want to share my experience. If it can help someone, the way that Christina Lopes' channel helped me, then that is what matters to me. But this is a result of me going through the process. Did I think a couple of years ago that I was going to be getting on screen and doing YouTube videos for anyone in this huge world to be able to access? Absolutely not. Did I think I could be confident enough to stand here and speak and have it go out to this endless network, global network? Absolutely not. It was a gift that appeared to me through time. So, embrace not knowing, because behind that or ahead of that is your gift. So, second, you have to learn to trust the process. Your soul knows what it's doing, even when your mind doesn't. This isn't random chaos. Your soul is intelligent, and your soul knows exactly what it's doing, as chaotic as it may seem. Third, you have to be willing to experiment. Try new things. Say no to things you've always said yes to. Say yes to things you've always said no to. See what feels authentic. Like I said in my last episode, we start to really increase our intuition around this time. Start listening to yourself. See what your body tells you, what your gut is telling you. When I want to do something and I'm listening to myself, if it's a yes, it's like this whole body surge that says, I need to do this, I need to do it now. And when it's a no, I get a cramp in my gut, stomach ache. Clear no. So, be willing to experiment. The last thing that you need to do is learn to be compassionate with yourself. If you're anything like me, you have been super harsh with yourself. You've been the most judgmental of yourself. Harsh, critical, not good enough for yourself. And that might be coming to the surface even more. So the best gift that you can give yourself is learn to be compassionate with yourself. And this is beautiful. You're not failing at life. You're becoming life. You're waking up. And you're starting to realize that life is short and you want to seize it every single second of your day. So let's talk about what emerges on the other side of this identity crisis. Because there is another side, as I've made mention, and it's beautiful. When you stop being the nice girl, you don't become nothing. You become everything you were meant to be before you learn to shrink yourself to fit into other people's needs. Before you had to shift and mold yourself into a space that you couldn't even fit in. Your authentic self is still kind, but it's not nice. You can go back to my video nice versus kind, where I talk about the difference in that. There is a difference. Being kind is about being compassionate, but it has boundaries. It's loving, but you're done with people pleasing. We're done. It's generous, but it's not giving from an empty cup. When you give from an empty cup and your soul is saying, hey, I need you to slow down. Hey, I need you to do something different, and you don't listen to it, trust me, the universe will give you a nudge. For me, it was a head injury that I didn't die from. So it's about always learning to give from a full cup. So you might also find that you're actually quite direct and that you have strong opinions that you never thought about before. You might find that you're creative, more intuitive, that you like to read books that never interested you before. The biggest thing, you might start to realize that you're more powerful than you ever imagined. And this is what a spiritual awakening really means. So this is what a spiritual awakening really means. It's not becoming someone new, but actually remembering who you always were beneath all the conditioning. Who you are at your soul level. So I know there's a fear that if you're not nice, you'll be alone. If you set boundaries, people will leave. If you speak the truth, you'll be rejected. But here's what I've discovered. When you show up authentically, you attract authentic relationships. When you stop performing and performing niceness, you create space for genuine connection. So going back to that authenticity, that's a big pillar for my channel. I'm not going out of my way to edit it and make it look fancy, take out where I fumble on words so that I end up looking like I don't make mistakes. That's not authentic. We are imperfectly perfect, and we need to embrace these things. So you won't see edits on my videos. And that's okay. A couple of years ago, I would have cared about that. Do I care now? No. Because I'm creating a space for genuine connection. I'm creating a space for authenticity. When you do that, the right people will love the real you. And the wrong people will leave. And both those outcomes are real gifts. So, how do you actually navigate this transition? How do you move from nice girl to authentic self without burning your entire life down? First thing, start small. You're not going to reinvent yourself overnight. Like I said, this was a 5-year process for me, and it's going. It's just that I'm in a place of more integrated place now. And it's not so chaotic. It's not tumultuous at all. Practice one area where you can actually be more authentic. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's with a friend. Maybe it's saying no to one commitment. Maybe if you say yes all the time to working overtime at your job, say, no, sorry, I can't today. And maybe it's expressing a preference that you usually keep to yourself. You can allow people to get to know who you really are. But baby steps. Second, get curious about your reactions. When you feel guilty for setting a boundary, ask yourself, whose voice is this? What am I afraid of? Guilt, fear, those are just there to stop us. They're there to put in place to stop us from advancing. Just think about it. You're about to do something really cool. And then fear shows up. And that fear is telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. And you have a choice in that moment. There's an example. Years ago, when I went to New Zealand, we went to the first place that they ever did bungee jumping in Taupo, New Zealand. I was so excited. No fear whatsoever. And got up to when it was my turn, they strapped the cords around me. Boom, the fear set in. I didn't want to do it. That fear was there to stop me. And I plowed right through that fear, head first into a body of water, and it was the most incredible, unbelievable, unforgettable experience I've ever had. But think about this in our lives. Think about how that fear shows up. And instead of going head first, or as I have a good friend said, jump off a cliff and see where it takes you. Instead of doing that, most of us let that fear show up and say, yeah, I can't do this. It's too risky. So often our guilt is just, even guilt, talking about guilt, it's just old programming trying to pull us back into familiar patterns. So guilt and fear do that. Third, find your support system. Surround yourself with people who are on their own journey of awakening. I didn't have too many people with me, but I had one friend, and she was the one who introduced me to Christina Lope's channel. She had gone through awakening a couple of years earlier, and she was there for me. She was actually the one who told me, I think you're having a spiritual awakening. And my support system wasn't huge. I couldn't talk about all of this stuff that I was going through, the physical changes that I was going through, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental, all of this. Couldn't talk about it, but I could talk about it with her. And it was enough to just have that one person. We don't have to have this huge support system. But as long as you have a support system, that's what matters. So if you're here on this channel and you're resonating with what I'm talking about today, just know that I am part of your support system. You don't have to do this alone. And I mentioned this before, practice self-compassion. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to swing from one end of the pendulum to the other. And that's normal. That's how we learn. Practice self-compassion. And this is the start of putting an end to the negative self-talk. And finally, I want you to develop a spiritual practice that helps you stay connected to that authentic self. Now, a lot of times people talk about meditation and you think that you need to be sitting for an hour in meditation. And so then a lot of us don't do it because an hour is a long time. Start small. I started with literally 5 minutes. I could barely even sit in meditation for 5 minutes. And even 5 years later, 30 minutes is good for me. But I do it. And it helps me to stay connected to myself. But it doesn't just have to be meditation. It could be journaling. It could be yoga. It could be time in nature. Something else entirely. Whatever helps you. Remember who you are. So remember, this isn't a destination. It's a journey. You're not trying to become perfect. You're shifting from the 1.0 version of yourself to the 2.0 version. And you're going to continue to evolve. You're done being fake. You're trying to become real. This is your journey to becoming real. And think about this for a second. It's so beautiful when I think about it. Every time you choose being authentic over something else, you give the women in your life permission to do the same. And your courage becomes contagious. This happened with my mother. Love my mother to pieces. But I wouldn't say that I was fighting, but definitely head to head and always in a push and pull relationship, reactive. But once I went through this process, and I had therapists saying, this is your mom. She's going to be whoever she's going to be. You just have to get used to the fact that she's like this. And once I started becoming authentic, and in front of her, that was hard. I gave her permission to do the same. And now our relationship couldn't be stronger. So just remember that. You're giving others the permission to do the same. So if you're asking yourself, if I'm not the nice girl anymore, who am I? I want you to know that that is the right question that you're asking. It's the beginning of your freedom. It's the beginning of you liberating yourself from this old version of yourself. You don't have to be a nice girl anymore. You're an authentic woman. You're the one who speaks truth with compassion. You're the one who loves without losing yourself. And you're the one who gives from fullness, not emptiness. So this identity crisis isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. It's your soul's way of setting you free from prison that you didn't even know you were in. Think about that. So thank your soul. If you don't have a spiritual practice yet, start with thanking your soul morning and night that this is happening for you. Lean into the discomfort, trust the process, and remember, on the other side of this transformation is the most beautiful, authentic, powerful version of yourself that you've ever been. So in closing, I want to hear from you. What's one way you've stopped being the nice girl lately? Or one way that you're going to stop being the nice girl after watching this? What is one boundary that you're going to set? Even if it feels scary, but it's necessary. And share it in the comments. Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And remember, you're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you always were. So stay tuned for the next episode. Like, subscribe, and share this channel and click the bell so that you're notified the next time I do an episode. And I'll be back soon where we go even deeper into talking about menopause and waking up. And if you'd like to catch my training, 4 Steps to Finding Your Voice in Relationships, click the link below, www.unmutewithpriya.com, and you can apply for a limited time free coaching call with me where we can actually start to address where in your life are you stuck and what can you start to do to get unstuck. Until then, be brave, be real, and trust that who you are beneath the nice girl is absolutely worth discovering.